We're absolutely the active GC. So we have a longer term strategic vision of where we want to go with this business. And we're well on our way to achieving that. So we don't want to be the paper pusher GC. Like we feel like we can give a much better client experience when we can control a lot more of what's happening than just subbing everything out. There's always going to be things that we are going to subcontract, and we have amazing subcontractor relationships that we value very much. So we don't want those to ever go away entirely. But so one of the first things that we did was to bring in the plumbing company last year. That was the first strategic move of let's bring that trade in-house. We also want to bring in electrical and HVAC because those are the biggest needs.
MEP right there.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Sarah Card, co-founder of GC Legacy Construction. She has 20 plus years of experience in construction and financial services and is passionate about leadership and people development. GC Legacy was founded in 2019, specializes in quick serve retail and single tenant spaces, with services including ground-up construction, tenant improvements, and renovations. They focus on value engineering, providing efficient, high-quality projects within budget, and their mission is to simplify the construction process without compromising time, quality, or budget. And with that said, Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Excited to sit down and talk with you guys today.
Yeah, we're excited too. We, always great when it's somebody in Arizona because, that means that my side of the world is doing big, bad, cool stuff compared to Will's side in Chicago there. So it's always really cool in that regard. And then also that usually means I could probably sneak you out for lunch or a drink or coffee or something. So that's always another benefit.
Yes, let's do it for sure.
Awesome. So I said the nice things about you, certainly, but give us the background. Tell us the origin story. Tell us how the company was founded, and tell us why it's so great.
Awesome. Happy to do that. So I get asked that question a lot: is how did you end up in construction? And it is actually a really long story with a lot of crazy twists. They'll probably surprise you along the way. So I will start back at the very beginning, I guess. I was born and raised in Montana. And my parents always had their own business. So I grew up in kind of that entrepreneurial world. And after I graduated high school, really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Thought I might want to go into sports broadcasting, but had, a change of plans and ended up being blessed with a baby when I was 19 years old, which kind of changed the trajectory of where I was going to go. So my sister at the time had ended up going to school in San Diego, California. And she convinced me to pack up and move down there. So that is what I did. Packed up, moved down to San Diego, and I went to work for an engineering firm. That's kind of where I got my start. Didn't really know what I was going to do. So just really started at the bottom. Started as a receptionist, answering phones, and really just went from there to kind of start building out my career. Still not really knowing what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Met my husband in San Diego, my now husband at the time. I met him in San Diego. When we got married, we decided that we wanted to raise kids in Montana and not raise kids in California. And so we packed up and moved back up to Montana at that time. And my husband had actually graduated from college and had gone to work for a real estate company. And they were doing mostly multifamily. So they were buying apartment buildings, gathering groups of investors together and buying apartment buildings. Well, when we decided to move to Montana, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And he loved what he was doing. So we decided, let's start our own business. So we decided to start our own business in real estate. So we moved back up to Montana, the amazing Flathead Valley, very northwest corner of Montana, a small town called Kalispell. Most people know Whitefish now because it's the hot spot, the touristy area, but we were in the less known part.
My wife has a Whitefish shirt. I don't know if she's ever actually been there, but she has a shirt because people comment on it. Oh, Whitefish. And then she's like, yeah.
Yeah, she has to pretend that she knows what it is. I
Absolutely.
love that. Kalispell used to be the big town, and it actually is still size-wise bigger, but Whitefish is definitely the hot spot, the touristy area. They've got all the good stuff up there. So we bought a couple of apartment buildings. He did exactly what he was doing in California, raised funds from people that we knew and bought 2 apartment buildings, and we kind of started our business from there. Decided then that he really liked the land development space, so we thought we'd try our hand at that and bought our first project and did land development, and we're really getting that going. And then 2008 hit. And I don't know if you guys remember 2008, but it was quite an interesting time in our lives. And so that real estate business really just died. I mean, there was, and really the bigger issue was the lack of lending. I think if the lending hadn't frozen up the way that it did, we probably would have been able to weather that storm. But with the projects we were doing, everything got super tight. And so we were like, well, what do we do now? We have this business that isn't a business anymore. And he had met somebody through the course of this that lived in Dallas, Texas. And he was a real estate broker that was still doing multifamily. And he asked my husband, Brent, he said, why don't you come down and work for me? So by this time we had 3 kids and they were little. The youngest was 3. I think they were 3, 5, and 12. They were 3, 5, and 11, somewhere around that age. So we packed up our whole lives and moved to Dallas, Texas, where we knew nobody other than this guy that my husband was going to go and work for. So closed down the business, moved to Texas. My husband went to work for this real estate broker. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll just, stay home for a little bit and try and figure it out while you get your thing up and going. And that year, the guy that he worked for decided to, said he was going on vacation for Thanksgiving, and he never came back. And so, so here we are. We picked up, moved our whole lives. My husband's working, and all of a sudden that business is now gone too. And we're like, what are we going to do? So I had a skill set that I had built up through the work that I had done, not only doing administration, but by that point I had also started to do bookkeeping, starting at the very beginning of just accounts payable, moved into receivables, and then started really just doing end-to-end bookkeeping. So I had that skill set. And so I just went out and started looking for a job, while he was, of course, also looking for work at the same time. But my skill set was much more applicable to really anything. And I landed at a construction company. This is coming around full circle, you guys. I'm getting there. So I went to work for a construction company, and they were in the process of starting up a facilities maintenance division where we were going to go in. Gold's Gym was the client, and we had these service techs that would go into Gold's Gym and just do their service work, changing light bulbs, fixing leaky faucets, just the little things. And we'd go in on a regular basis. Well, I got put in charge of helping run that division and building that division out, building the operations for that. And so I had, at that point, I think I'd built it up to about 6 technicians that were working for me. And one of them ended up breaking his leg, unfortunately, and was going to be out for at least 6 weeks. And I was scrambling, like, what do I do? Like, we have this client to service. I've got to figure something out. Well, my brother, who is 7 years younger than me, was in Montana at the time. And he was kind of at that stage where he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And his background was all construction. He had started from the very beginning, painting, framing. I mean, all of the rough jobs, all the way up to like doing finish work for these $1 million homes. So he was really good at what he was doing, but just again, in that same place of where I want to go with the rest of my life. So I'm like, well, while you're figuring that out, can you come down to Texas and fill in for this guy? Because I know that you can handle all the stuff. I don't have to train you. And he was like, sure. So he moved down to fill in, and he never left.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a real bait, hook, and catch right there.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So moved to Texas, ended up staying in Texas. Fast forward a few years, I didn't end up staying at that construction company. And I decided to take a completely different leap, and I went to work in corporate for JP Morgan Chase. So
a natural, transition.
Right? Yes. So I, left that space and went into the corporate world, and it was an amazing experience. I met amazing people. I mean, my skill set grew so much in that space, but I always in the back of my mind kind of knew corporate's not for me. I love the smaller town, the small business feel, the family feel, not so much of the bureaucracy, and just, I just knew that that's kind of where eventually we wanted to do something different. My husband was in the same boat. He actually was working for Chase at the time as well. And same thing, we'd had our own business, and he was passionate about that real estate space and really wanted to get back there. My brother stayed at that construction company in the meantime. And they had actually, so one of the biggest clients that we were working with in that space was Starbucks. So my brother was kind of in charge of running those projects on site. He was the on-site superintendent for those and built some really great relationships. That sector of the business ended up moving out to a new business with one of the other gentlemen that had worked there, and my brother went with him to go work for that business. Well, one summer, fast forward, summer of 2019, we were up in Montana at our favorite place in the world on the lake, at our little family cabin that we've had since the 40s, and sitting around the campfire and talking. And I just said, I'm ready to be done. Like, I want to do something different. And my brother said, well, guess what? So do I. So we said, let's start our own business. What should we do? And he's like, well, we know construction. I know construction. I can do that space. And so it was that sitting around that campfire, the three of us decided we were going to start GC Legacy Construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2019, you started Legacy Construction,
Mm-hmm.
but what about the clients? What clients? What are you servicing? Talk to us about that, because the backstory, I promise, totally worth the backstory, because when we started digging into this in the free call, I was like, oh my God, there's so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
So started from literally zero, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Brand new company. So initially our idea was the gentleman that he was working for, we were going to buy that company because my brother had these really strong Starbucks relationships, but to build for a company like Starbucks, they have pretty strict requirements about you need to be qualified to be able to build for them. And a couple of those qualifications were you had to be in business for 3 years, and you had to have at least $3 million in revenue for each of those 3 years. Those were like baseline requirements. And we knew, well, if we're a brand new company, we're not going to meet any of those requirements. What are we going to do? So we worked with the gentleman that he was working for to try to buy that business, because he was at this place, that gentleman was at the place where his business was kind of running along, but he really didn't have any interest in growing that business and making it into what my brother knew that it could be. And was kind of holding my brother back in the way that, like, not letting him grow and see his full talent. And so we thought, okay, well, let's buy the business, because if we buy the business, the license comes with it. So that was essentially what we would have been buying. So we started those negotiations. We had everything ready to go. We got almost to the finish line, and the guy decided he didn't want to sell the company.
Man, let down.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And so my brother just said, well, I don't want to stay here. So he quit. So,
mic drop.
Mic drop, right? So now my brother's out of work. We've got our jobs. We're ready to start this company, and we have 0 clients. Like, this is not what we plan to do. So we're like, that's okay. We'll just start. We'll grow it. He had a couple other contacts from when he had worked in the construction space. So thought we'll go out and we'll just start building this and we'll wait our 3 years and we'll build up our business and we'll go back to Starbucks in 3 years when we're ready to qualify and we'll go from there. And that was in probably about January, end of December 2019. And then a little thing called COVID happened.
Oh yeah. Yep. That might be almost as bad as 2008, 2009.
Yeah. We have definitely learned a lot of lessons and had some trying times through all this. But you know what? We wouldn't be where we are today without going through that stuff. So I don't ever look back at any of it and be angry about it, because it's been invaluable. Like we've had to do things that we wouldn't have normally had to do, which makes you appreciate things when they do work the way that they're supposed to. So yeah, COVID happens, and obviously the construction business pretty much shuts down, at least for quite a period of time. And so we just did what we could and got the small jobs that we could. In the meantime, my husband and I stayed with our corporate jobs because we knew there's no way this business can support 3 of us. So we did what we needed to do to make sure that my brother could focus on going out and building, reconnecting with those relationships he had. And we did end up getting one particular project, which was a ground up shell building for a Starbucks, actually in Arizona. So that was the plan originally, was to start the business in Arizona. My brother and his family were going to move, and we wanted to build our business here because this is where we all wanted to be. So the first project we did was in Cave Creek, Arizona, and it was for a developer. So we built the exterior shell, and then Starbucks comes in and does the interior finish out, is usually how most of these work. Starbucks doesn't own most of their real estate, so we'll come in and do the interior finish outs. But this one, we got to build the shell. The project was a challenge. And again, it's one of those things where if it had been an easy one, I don't think we would have had any appreciation for what it takes to start a business. Because this one put us through the ringer for sure. But we ended up getting it done. And what happened through the course of that project is the interior finish out. Starbucks was having a very difficult time with the developer that owned the building. There were a lot of things that it just was not it didn't end up being a very good deal, a very good relationship. But because we knew the Starbucks side so well from the work that, my brother had done through all those years for them, we were able to actually help on the interior finish out and work on those relationships. And through that, there was one of the higher up people in Starbucks ended up visiting this project, which they wouldn't normally visit, but because it was so contentious with what was happening, he ended up being on site a lot. Well, he knew my brother. He had known of my brother from their past relationship. So they had a chance to kind of rekindle that relationship. And we went so out of our way to make that project successful for Starbucks that he said, I'm going to sponsor you guys, and we're going to go through. They have basically not an appeal process, but basically a process that if you're sponsored by somebody within Starbucks, they can do a review and determine you'll make an exception on these requirements to be able to give you your vendor license. And so we were fortunate enough. He went to bat for us. He sponsored us, and we got our vendor's license.
Oh man, that is the way to do it. So instead of having to wait for 3 years and build up the revenue business, you have to prove yourself. That wouldn't have happened if you didn't do like an amazing job and went totally out of your way. So, so there's definitely other ways to go about it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of history and knowing someone, but you still have to do a good job, like a really great job to be able to do that. So, okay.
Yep.
So you're able to shortcut that process, and and I'm putting in quotes shortcut because I'm sure that because the learning lessons beforehand is definitely not shortcutting.
Yeah.
So you quote unquote shortcut that process. What did that do for you?
So what that did is we were able to then go back to all of the other people within Starbucks that my brother had built these great relationships with and let them know, hey, we're back in business. And they were so excited that all of a sudden we started getting work. Like, hey, bid on this for us. You guys can bid on this job, bid on this job. Well, all those jobs happen to be in Texas, not Arizona. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we are again. now we're back to Texas. And so that is to this day where our corporate office is in Dallas, Texas. And that's where we've decided to really build the hub of the business. We're expanding out into all kinds of other states now, but that is really how we got back to the hub of where our business is.
So to give some idea of size, where are you at? So we're in 2024, 3/4 of the way through 2024. Where are you at, or we're going to end up at by the end of the year?
Revenue wise.
Sure. Revenue, employees, all the above.
So both. So we will end the year this year with about, I think, 36 employees. Awesome. And our revenue will be at about probably around 21 million this year. And
Very
to
good.
in context, the year that we got our license, so that was in 2022, I think we ended up doing about 9 or 10 million in revenue that year. And then last year we ended the year just under 16 million, and this year we'll do 21 million. So very rapid growth.
Love those numbers.
Very
Great
rapid
numbers.
scaling. Yeah. And we actually ended up acquiring a plumbing company last year as well. So that has definitely helped employee number and revenue and opened up a whole new set of learning opportunities. And
learning opportunities. I love that. Learning opportunities. Before we dive into some of those learning opportunities, I want to talk more about relationships, right? So, obviously building scale, we believe people, process, technology, that is the way you scale. People, not only internally, but externally, right? Like how the relationships you build become huge. How do you make those relationships deep to the point where, hey, like we're back in business, and then, oh my God, hooray, let's go. Like, that it was almost instantaneous overnight of like, hey, we got this opportunity that we knocked it out of the park in Arizona, which then got sponsored, which then got our vendor license back, which now we're going to explode. Let's talk about how does Legacy think about relationships in that regard?
They're everything. I mean, honestly, our relationships are everything. So one of my mentors that I've met recently over the last couple years is Brandon Dawson. And one of the things that he says all the time is collaboration is the new currency. And that is absolutely one of the foundations of our business. We cannot do things without people. You cannot grow and scale a business without people. And I think a lot of business owners get stuck in feeling like they have to do everything because they know how to do it the best, right? And we do. You wouldn't start a business if you didn't know how to do exactly what you are doing. But you can't scale that business without duplicating yourself into other people. So you're right, Justin. It's not just the internal people, which are everything, by the way. Like our internal people, they really are everything. But it is those external relationships as well. And I think the way GC Legacy thinks about relationships is that's the whole foundation of our business. We are in this to build those types of long-term relationships because it's not always about the bottom dollar, right? We're in business to make money. Everybody is. But there are times when the money doesn't matter. If we need to make something right and it means it's going to cost us, we're going to make it right because it's the right thing to do. That is really the foundation of we are going to take care of people. We want to treat people the way that we would expect to be treated. That's how we view relationships.
Well, I love that. I mean, that goes right along with Spot Migration's core values. Do the right thing they're not aspirational. That is a core value of ours. So I love hearing that. We have money to make, plenty to go around. Sometimes you eat a little bit less, but in the end, right? It's the long-term thinking versus the short-term thinking.
Yep.
And that little bit can help put you over the hump for long-term, whether it's survival, long-term, just being able to do way better from a business perspective and help all the employees out, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Can you give some examples of like, where you had to kind of, I'm going to use a 4-letter word here, where you had to eat shit, so to speak, but net benefit, right? Where the outcome actually open up either an opportunity, doors, or whatnot by doing that.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is part of a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So one recent example that comes to mind is actually on a project that we were doing in Houston, Texas, and we messed up. I mean, quite frankly, like we just messed up. It was a Starbucks that we were doing in a high-rise building, which is unusual. Those are not as common as their standalone stores. It was a little bit of a complicated space. But when they did the concrete work, they didn't put the correct lining underneath. And so they actually broke through and they didn't have that barrier underneath. So the water drained down to the store below it. And, it was a little convenience store that was down there, and it obviously did some damage and ruined some of their inventory, but we owned it, right? We made the mistake. We're not going to try and cover this up. We're not going to say this wasn't us. We raised the flag immediately, like this happened. How do we make this right? And so we did. I mean, we met with the owner of the building. We met with the Starbucks team. We met with the owners of that space down below, and we made it right. And we made it right on our dime because that's the right thing to do. We're not going to charge a change order to somebody when it was our mistake. So that's just the most recent example that came to mind. And sometimes that happens. Maybe we missed something in a bid and it's a big ticket item. That's happened. There's a material. We didn't catch it when we went through the plans. We're not going to issue a change order to you because we missed it. We missed it. We're going to eat that cost. And it's those little things that, they build credibility. And one of our core values is transparency and accountability. Those are actually two of them. And that means something. And we're one of those companies that we have a set of core values, and we don't just have a set of core values just to put them on the wall and say they're there.
Aspirational. Yeah,
exactly. They honestly drive our business every single day. To the point where we have a daily team call every morning. We kick off our day with our team and we just talk about wins. We spend 15 minutes and we go through the wins. What were your wins from the day before? But that call starts every morning by what's our mission statement and what are our core values? Tell us one of your core values, what it means to you and somebody that you've seen living that out. And that is how we are ingraining this into our team every single day because it's that important to us.
Beautiful.
That's a good exercise to have, or a good program to have, good thing to do, however you phrase that. Because I do think that when you get true core values, not the aspirational ones, those are just, marketing stuff, collateral and things. But like when you have true core values, it's super important to keep reiterating them over and over and over and over again, because like that's how important it is, right? Like how many times when you're a kid, or how many times to your kids do you tell them the same thing over and over again because you're trying to instill the idea or the value or hey, like that's not being kind. I said it to Franklin all the time, like, hey, that's not kind. And one of our family core values is like kindness, no exceptions. Like we are going to be kind. Like that's who we are as a family. So it's like you have to keep reiterating it. So like having hey, this is our our morning roll call or whatever it's called at Legacy, but like we're going to go over this every day because it's that important. And that's how you know that it's a true core value and not just, hey, it's a thing we got some stickers for the wall and we threw on the website and it's pretty great because it sounds like we care.
Right. And that happens a lot. And it's unfortunate because I think it's one of those things that's been so transformational. And I cannot tell you how happy it makes me when I have one of our employees say, you know what? We were results oriented today. We did this. We were aligned today. We did this. And I'm like, I love it. They're getting it. Like it is truly part of the way we're doing business.
And to your point, it changes how you do business. Like you gave the example of change order. Like we missed the thing. Like we did that. We missed it. So like because of our core values, we operate differently, which then also may say like, hey, maybe our bidding process takes a little longer because like we do want to make sure we capture everything and not just try to low bid you just so we can get the job and then just change order the hell out of you like as time goes on, because like that's not how we operate. We don't want to think that way. So it just changes the business in totality when you have a true, core value environment where it's like, hey, this is our mission and like this is how we're going to do it, the style at which we're going to do it for our core values. So no,
absolutely.
As I was thinking about this, there's really 2-3 different types of GCs, right? There's your paper general, and then there's your like active GC. Which one are you?
We're absolutely the active GC. So we have Yeah, we have a longer term strategic vision of where we want to go with this business. And we're well on our way to achieving that. So we don't want to be the paper pusher GC. Like we feel like we can give a much better client experience when we can control a lot more of what's happening than just subbing everything out. There's always going to be things that we are going to subcontract, and we have amazing subcontractor relationships that we value very much. So we don't want those to ever go away entirely. But so one of the first things that we did was to bring in the plumbing company last year. That was the first strategic move of let's bring that trade in-house. We also want to bring in electrical and HVAC because those are the biggest needs.
MEP. MEP right there.
There you go. You got the MEPs. So we actually just started electrical and HVAC. We had our first 2 employees start a week ago. So we are well on our way to that strategic.
Right.
Yeah. Super exciting. And we'll continue to be able to build that out so that we can be the active GC.
So interesting. So obviously there was an acquisition for the plumbing side. So one, how did that go? Usually that comes with lots of learning opportunities, I believe is the phrase you used. But then separately from that, then you say, our HVAC and electrical, it sounds like you're trying to build that more internally from the ground up. So why the difference? And then let's talk about the acquisition.
Yeah. So with the plumbing company, yes, learning opportunities. I love to put it that way. So it was actually a subcontractor that had worked with us forever. Especially with my brother, he had been doing his Starbucks work for a long time. And I think what we find with a lot of our trades, they are amazing at what they do. So our master plumbers, this gentleman in particular, our master plumber, John, amazing. Like he is so good in the field, but has no interest in running a business. So it was a great partnership to be able to say, okay, you can come in, have a steady salary, not have to worry about all of that other stuff, still lead your team of people, do the training and do the things that you're really good at. And we will take care of all of the back end stuff. So that was really how that all came about. And it was acquisition, but we really just purchased the assets is how we ended up doing that. It was very much a handshake deal. Good old boys, Texas out there. Very much a handshake deal. Yes.
Wait. So when you say that, like, as in no due diligence or like looking at the books, like how handshaky was this deal here?
How handshaky.
Handshaky. I like that. That's a new term. It was extremely handshaky.
Okay.
Yes. I would say the extent of the due diligence was pretty much what assets do you have and what do you think they're worth, and let's put them on a list. That really was the extent of the due diligence. So, you know what? Maybe we did good. Maybe we did not do so good. At the end of the day, it worked out. It was a good thing for everybody. And even if we lost money in that or did not do so well in that, it's okay because it worked out. Going forward, as we continue to do acquisitions, because that will come. It will come with our growth. We know that there's going to be acquisitions. We have spent the last year or so educating ourselves more on that process to understand the correct way to do that, the way to do the due diligence, the way to research the business, the way to negotiate. So we would definitely be a little bit more sophisticated in that going forward. But this worked out.
So the next company listening that is going to become part of the GC Legacy family, be conscientious that it's not going to be just a beer and a handshake, and let's go.
It's going to be a little less handshaky.
A little less handshaky, a little bit more due diligence. So that makes sense. So then, obviously, you had this experience. I'm sure that comes with tons of hiccups that maybe you didn't perceive, as in maybe assets weren't as valuable as thought, or maybe people, culturally, fitting in regards to like anytime you're merging two companies, you have an inherent culture meshing, which can, be very interesting, to be the easiest way to put that. So what was that meshing of cultures? What was that like?
I love the word interesting. It's one of my favorite words because it can mean so many things.
Absolutely.
But yes, the culture piece of it was very interesting for sure. And I will say, I do think, looking back on that in hindsight, I do think that's one of the more challenging pieces. And I think that is something that maybe a lot of people don't necessarily think about is you've got this set of employees that's being handed over that is used to doing things one way. And now we're going to ask you to do something different. And that can be a challenge. And it has been a challenge. And we did have some turnover in that space because we did want to do things a little bit differently. More structured, I think, is probably the biggest thing is the structure around that. There were things we did well and there were things we didn't do well. And again, all of those are learning opportunities. So one of the things I think we didn't do very well is I think we maybe rolled changes out a little bit too fast. And people need time to be able to adapt to something new. And so that is something that, if we were to do that again, we would definitely be much more intentional about doing that and giving things a chance to settle in before we maybe changed again or added something else on top of it. One thing I do think we did well, though, and that is really important to me in everything we do, is to explain the why behind what we're doing. If people understand why, they're going to be much more likely to adopt it, right? To buy into what it is that you're trying to do. You got to sell the vision. I mean, that is one thing that my brother is amazing at, right? He is the visionary for our company. And that is, I think, why we've been able to grow and scale as much as we have, is because he has this huge vision of where we want to go. And he's able to sell that to the team. And we all buy into that and we support him behind that. And we figure out, okay, now how do we go and implement that vision? And I think that's something that's really important when you're trying to align a culture with people that are coming from somewhere that was completely different.
Hey,
yeah.
So a good amount to unpack there. Can you talk about changes for a second? Can you give an example of a change that was kind of rough? And you talked about one change is the actual business, but what actually changed? Like, so if you're buying the business and it's an asset, right? So they're still doing the work. Besides the name change, what actually changed for them?
It was really more around, honestly, I think what they might take as the accountability piece. But for us, it was more, we started measuring things because we can't make decisions if we don't have data. So one example is they were doing time cards on a piece of paper that they would submit once a week. Well, that didn't work for what we were trying to build. Like we need to know more real data because that's how we drive decisions in our business. And so we implemented electronic time cards with GPS tracking. And that can kind of feel like, especially if you haven't necessarily been doing everything above board, that can cause a lot of turmoil. And it did. That was a very challenging change. So that's just one example. Also just who they're reporting to, right? It had been very, John owned the business and he would do all of the scheduling, and it was very just kind of like emergency, right? Whenever this comes up, okay, go here. Whenever this comes up, go here. So we wanted to put more structure around that. Let's actually put out a schedule. These are the jobs that you're going to be on, and this is who's going to be on this job. And that was an adjustment for some of them as well. So those are, a couple of the things that they're just hard changes.
I think that you find that a lot when you go from a business that's successful business, but then gets acquired, and there's just more structure in place in that business. It can totally make an employee feel like Big Brother is coming, or totally make that feeling.
Yeah.
But just based on what you've told us, one of your core values is being transparent. Right. So it's transparency has to happen in all aspects. So it's
yes.
Hey, being transparent with the schedule, being transparent with your time, being transparent with different people that you're talking with becomes part of the environment that you are specifically trying to build. And throwing somebody in a new environment can be very scary, inherently. That's not odd. That's what I will tell in your next due diligence process. You will still find similarities to that if you're acquiring a company that just has a little bit less operational maturity, right? Is this the way we put it? You have to weather that storm as it happens, I think, is a little piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, going forward, like we have more operational maturity now than we did when we bought that plumbing company. And so
Sure.
I do feel like it would be maybe not an easier transition, but we would be smarter about it and knowing how to do it. So I do think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And so now we fast forward. So you acquired the plumbing side, and now we're just going to build the HVAC, or at least starting. We're going to start building the HVAC and electrical side. So, why that decision instead of another acquisition, and then how, like, building those trades within, that comes with their own challenges that haven't been there.
Yes, which we're about to uncover, right? Like we're in the midst of that because they just started. So I'm sure we're going to start uncovering all of those things. But so we actually, with the HVAC and electrical, we did look at potentially doing the same thing that we had done with plumbing. We actually talked to a couple of our subcontractors and felt out some of those relationships to see if that was something they were interested in. And ultimately, it wasn't going to be a good fit with those. And so we decided, well, let's try and start these ones from the ground up because there are benefits, right? You build the culture from the beginning, the people that you hire on. So we hired on an amazing master HVAC and an amazing master electrician that we're going to be able to bring over, that we brought over. They started last week. And through our interview process, they already know our culture. They know our vision. They know where we're going. And so they're on board, they're bought in, and they want to build a team that's already aligned with the direction that we're trying to go. So it's, to me, I think going to be a much easier transition than trying to come in and completely change a culture. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. I know there's going to be challenges. Like, I'm not naive, but but we'll see.
Okay. So right now, building instead of buying. Buying doesn't mean it's without its challenges.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you got by buying essentially the company was the license, right?
Yep.
What about the electrical and the MEP side?
Same
license?
thing.
Okay.
Same thing. Yes. Yeah, they come over with their licenses.
Okay.
Yep.
So does this also, quote unquote, buy you relationships?
Yes, very good question. This does buy us relationships. So, in fact, our HVAC gentleman, his name is Jay. He is awesome. He had been working on a deal, bidding a project, and we are now getting that project. And it is a large project that will start next year. And the great thing is we're already seeing this. So I should have clarified, our plumbing company doesn't only do the projects for GC Legacy Construction. We will also do plumbing work for other GCs, because we want to keep that diversity, or not have that concentration risk, because really these are all standalone businesses. So down the road, eventually, if we wanted to break one of these off, sell one of these businesses, we could do that because we want them to be standalone businesses. So one of the GCs that we've started doing a lot of work for on the plumbing side has really liked our team and said, do you guys have any other trades that you can bid on? Well, as of last week, we said, guess what? Yes, we do. We have an electrical company and an HVAC company, and we are already getting awarded projects from them on all three sides. So we're already seeing the fruits of what we wanted this to be and what our intention was for a longer term plan. We're already starting to see the fruits of that. So it's really exciting.
So really, it was an investment, but you didn't have to wait too long on that investment to start getting returns.
Yeah.
That's super great.
Yes.
Was that the plan, or was it a happy accident that you were able to, in that quick of a turnaround?
You can be honest. It's just us here. Nobody else.
It's just us chickens.
Yeah, little combination of both, right? Like we'd always hoped that we could find somebody that already had relationships that they'd be able to bring over. But sometimes that can be looking for a needle in a haystack. And fortunately, we found the needle in the haystack. And so it is, of course, a little bit of fortune, but definitely some intention there as well.
Luckily for you, you got the magnet out. Makes it easier.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
So back to relationships. So I think for a great relationship to work, you have to add value all the time. Obviously doing great work, right? Hey, we do great work. We can do your plumbing. Now we can do HVAC. We can do electrical. Hey, we're keep adding services. What are other things that you do that we are setting ourselves apart, for our clientele?
Yeah, great question. And it's one of the things that when I say we're relationship driven and that we really want to build these long-term relationships, it's because when we get to know a client really well, it gives us the opportunity to add more value than what we might just by building them a building. So one of those examples is the Starbucks relationship. We know them so well that one of the things we've been able to do is they have the way that a lot of their stores work is they will order their materials for the stores, and then they will, once a GC is awarded, they'll ship everything to that general contractor, who will then take everything out to the job site, get it all installed once the job starts. Well, what we've seen a lot of challenges with that process because sometimes stuff will show up late and then now the job's going to be delayed because we don't have the materials that they had ordered. Or on the Starbucks side, they have had things in their design and they can't order them until a GC's been awarded. Well, that can take a couple months. So maybe now those pieces that they wanted in the store are no longer in stock. They can't find them. So they got to find a replacement for that. So there were all of these challenges around the logistics piece of it. And so we were able to come in and say, we can solve that for you. We know exactly what to do. And so we created a logistics division of our business that handles that for them. As soon as that store design is done and approved, they can order everything and ship it to our warehouse. We will inventory all of it. We actually even go one step further and do a plan scrub to make sure that they didn't miss anything. So that when that store starts, we can make sure everything is there ready to go. And we will send it out to the job site when they need it. Even if we're not the ones that are the GCs, we can do that for the other GCs. We will send everything to your store on a pallet, organized, so that you have it there when you need to put it in the store, it's all ready to go. If we didn't know Starbucks as well as we do, we wouldn't have been able to propose solutions to the problem that we knew that they were having. And so our goal over the next 10 years is we want to build at least 20 of those Starbucks-like relationships where we know those clients so in depth that we can solve other problems for them that they would have never even thought to ask us to solve.
Did you just create like a logistics subdivision or logistics company as a GC? Did I just hear that correctly?
GC Legacy Logistics. It is a company.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. There you have it, folks. Sometimes you can solve multiple problems by creating new companies. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now that ties in. We hadn't really talked about logistics on the show yet, so I really like hearing about, because that logistics, improper logistics, is delays. And delays means either people are not working or you're paying people to not work.
Yeah.
Right? Essentially the math behind that. Can I just ask, what is that cost saving, or if you can put a number to it or just something, or time saving, can you help understand like how big of a problem this is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually never thought of it in a time saving perspective, but I know just, even seeing it from the plumbing company side that works for the GC, one of the things that was happening is we were having to do return trips because we thought a sink was in the container waiting for us, and the guys get there and there is no sink, so they cannot install it. And some of these jobs, they're not all local to the Dallas area. We might be traveling all the way to South Texas. We've got a job in Brownsville. We have a job in Weslaco, which, that's like south.
4 to 6. That's like 4 to 6 hours. Yeah.
At least. Yeah. Probably longer than that from Dallas. So we were having to do return trips just to come back and put something in that should have been there in the first place. And that's just one trade. So if you add those things up, it's a huge time and money savings for the client and for us and for all of our subcontractors. And that lets us, to your point, be able to get those jobs done much faster.
Okay.
Yeah, like if your finishes come before your drywall, that becomes a problem. Like you can't do anything with that. Like it's just like there's materials on site, but they're not the right materials based upon, what trade is here that needs to actually work on
Yeah.
the build.
Yeah. So it definitely solves some challenges both on the Starbucks side, but also on the GC side. So it's a win-win for both of us, which is exactly what we're looking for.
That's the win-win. And we talk about value add. Like this is not construction anymore. Like this is a different. There's a whole separate industry that does logistics, and we're going to help you do that because we cherish this relationship so much, or we appreciate the relationship so much. That's awesome.
Absolutely,
that's super cool.
Yeah.
So, talked a little bit about people. Talked a little bit about process. From a technology standpoint, right? And was there like a construction management system that you started with? A lot of GCs will start with just paper, pencil, or an Excel spreadsheet.
That's us.
Where'd you start? Yeah,
we started with that all the way up to $21 million this year.
Oh man,
we have been extremely manual. So this year we actually did invest in technology. You guys will be very happy to hear that. We are switching over to Procore. So we have started to implement Procore towards the end of this year for our construction management solution. We're also upgrading our ERP system because we had been using QuickBooks Online, which has been great, but we're getting big enough that it's not going to be enough now. So we're switching over. Yeah. But yes, so this has been the year for technology investments because we realize we cannot continue to grow and scale using Excel and all of these little tools that we've made work up to this point.
Well, you can try to make them work. You're just going to bust your head through a wall trying to do that.
Yeah, we're going to be super inefficient, and that is not what we're going for.
Yep. Justin, I mean, this has been an amazing story. You got anything else for us?
I'm reminded that like you have built this very big business before you've implemented technology, which we say all the time. Like, you have to get the people right. You have to get the process right. Then you bolt on the technology to then maximize those things. To your point, you talk about efficiencies. It's like, if I have to manually input everything, or in an Excel sheet, I have to do all these things. It's like, there's no way that I can do this without just adding additional hands or additional labor to this, where it's like, oh, once you start adding technology to it, now it's like, oh, what can I get these people to do that's not data entry, which is just so mindless. And I don't think anybody actually likes that job. I always say, like, there's a job for everybody. Everybody likes something. I don't believe that somebody enjoys just entering data. If you are listening and you're that person, please reach out. I would love to have a conversation with you because I just don't believe that. I think people like accounting. Think people love numbers. That's not generally business owners. That's not the first thing, maybe for you, because obviously you have a background there, but that's generally not the place that they love. But no one loves data entry like that. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Justin, I'm a math guy. Sorry. I do like numbers.
Yeah, sure. But you are not trying to do all like run payroll and do like those things. Like those, you know what I mean? Like there are pieces of accounting that generally some people just don't like, which it makes sense. It's fine. But data entry, there's no one. There's not a person on the planet that really enjoys that job.
I will say, though, there are times when I do love data entry just because I need something mindless to do to, like, take my brain away from the craziness. So I'm like, data entry. I don't have to think about this. I can just do it. I feel productive and get it out of the way. But if I had to do it on a regular basis, nobody. I agree with you, Justin. Nobody loves that. But I will say, to your point, you said people, processes, technology. I would actually argue processes first. Like going back and knowing what we know, I would make sure that we had the processes in place and documented before we started bringing on all of the people. Because what we've learned is that's the only way that you can actually duplicate yourself. It's the only way that I've been able to transition things off of my plate that allow me to focus more on growing the business is being able to hand those off. Because when you start your business, everything's in your head. I mean, I know what to do, but if I died in the middle of the night, nobody would have been able to come in and pick up what I was doing. And so having those processes documented is the best place to start, because once you have that, then you can scale the people.
Sure. But you're a people, and you needed to then build the process. So
that is true. That
first.
is true. But I could have kept doing my thing without a documented process.
This has been awesome. What's the vision? What's the vision here? What's the vision long term? I know your brother is the visionary, but I'm sure you hear it every morning about where you're going. So what is the vision? Let the people know.
So in the next now it's 9 years. It was our 10-year vision, but we set this vision last year, so we have 9 years left. We're going to be a $500 million company, and we want to have 20 corporate relationships like we do with Starbucks to be able to build an impact. And we want to have a team of at least 1,200 people to be able to impact their lives.
Love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Love that. God.
Very specific. I love that.
Yes.
Got to be specific with your vision.
Right.
Justin, I think it's time for our LQ. Our last question. Sure. You wanna head us off?
For sure. So, Sarah, if you could go back 20 years and give yourself some advice, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid of what people think. Take the risks, because you need to fail. You need to fail. You need to fail to be able to move on to the next thing. And if you're not failing, you're not growing. And I would absolutely tell myself that. Be confident in yourself. Don't be afraid to fail. Fail forward.
I love
fail forward. Okay. Yeah. Love
that. We will drop all the social links and all that fun stuff in the show notes. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, Sarah, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Easiest way to get a hold of me personally? Email. Send me an email. Yep. It's Sarah with an H at gclegacyconstruction.com. Love to speak to you.
Awesome. Is there any parting words you'd like to tell the people before we say our goodbyes?
Well, thank you to you guys for putting this on. I think this is great to be able to hear people's stories, and I just hope that something in this inspires you to go out and pursue whatever it is that you want to do, because it is worth it. It's hard, but hard is what makes it worth it. So don't be afraid. Go out and do what you want to do.
I wrote down the word resilience. It's probably spelled wrong, so don't worry about that. It just kept going through my mind. I was just like, God. Damn, they're resilient. Holy shit. So I guarantee our listeners had just as good of a time as me and Will did. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
keep building scale.
Scale.